Hey everybody, this is your pilot Quentin J. Parker, and I'm going to share my observations thus far of the X-Plane 12 beta. So this is really going to be just a bookmark of where it is in its development. Obviously, my install's a bit tarted up with some ortho, but I'll address that later. So for now, we're homing in on Northeast Philly's ramp area, where I'm going to take off in the TorqueSim SR22, because their SRs are the gold standard in Cirrus simulation. You hear that crackling and popping? That's not rain. I think it's the SR22's engine cooling, but I'm not sure. Oh, on a quick side note, I recorded my prior video shortly after the beta dropped, and in it, those trees were all green. So it's nice to finally have naturally turning seasons in X-Plane. But as nice as the fall is looking, I jumped ahead to winter, and it's going to be crazy. The sky of deep winter does indeed look crisp and cold, but taxiing on an iced over apron had me sliding all over the place. Not at all recommended. Also, I set the static weather to snowing but gradually deteriorating and took off into it in a small plane. I am now the subject of an NTSB investigation video. Spoiler alert, it was dead-ass pilot error. Still could use some work, but X-Plane 12 gives a better visual representation of weather than X-Plane 11, especially wet weather. The lightning artwork could use some retouching. Hang on a sec. Let's get this puppy started. Fuses are all in. Switches off. AC off. Power. Prime. And boost. I'm not using TrackIR right now because something weird is going on in my place. I'm picking up all sorts of extra reflections that I can't control. My light filter threshold is maxed out at 255 and it's still acting crazy. Clear left, clear cowl, clear right, ready for ignition. Clear prop! Some compatibility quirks I've noticed are that on launch, I get an error about the sound bank. The PFD's pitch bar is being askew as seen here. And sometimes when I'm on autopilot, the plane flies a little uncoordinated to the right, even in a calm wind. Just some stuff to deal with until these birds are patched to full X-Plane 12 compliance. That was a 20-second crank right there, and that had me worried. Okay, looks good. Let's get the local weather.
Northeast Philadelphia information. Hotel 1520 Zulu special arriving runways 0633 departing runways 0633 weather wind 100 degrees at 4 knots gust 9er visibility more than 10 miles rain sky conditions few at 6,200 scattered at 28,500 temperature 14.0 altimeter 2992 advise on initial contact you have information hotel
And hotel again, go figure. I suspect the overall ground friction or native aircraft surface handling in X-Plane 12 has been tweaked from X-Plane 11. The native SR didn't slide all over the place like X-Plane 11 planes do. Those of us with yawing issues will still have to set response curves. Oh snap! Let's put on the headset. Active noise reduction, baby. I like how the default airports are modeled. Using generic assets, they manage considerable accuracy, at least to the airports I've been to in the real world. Night lighting of the airport environment is greatly improved, and I especially like the reflectivity of the surface puddles and pooling water. The fidelity of X-Plane 11 airports is hit and miss with varying degrees of incompatibility. I've got nicer recent stuff that works, but still uses X-Plane 11's 2D trees. And older stuff like X-Captain's KPHL Rebooted that comes with downtown Philly, and that isn't working at all. Now I'm going to go ahead and say that the biggest visual difference is that X-Plane 12 is more atmospheric, and vibrantly so. It doesn't look at all washed out as in X-Plane 11, and not oversaturated like Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. This is accomplished through an effective combination of the new lighting engine, color shaders, and clouds. X-Plane 12 lighting ranges from spectacular, like in this very flight at dusk, to super meh over a city at night. The ambiance at dusk is my favorite because of the haze on the horizon and the way the sky turns to fire. When this happens, any clouds get a glowing patina that's the encore before the curtain of night comes down. Sometimes the clouds can look a little wonky, but Laminar Research is working to fix that. Also in need of fixing is a flickering issue. But despite those things, I think the world in X-Plane 12 just kind of pops, you know? The shadows of the 3D trees are everything. When the wind rustles the trees, their shadows dance across the ground, building walls, and airplane fuselages. I feel like there's a performance boost over X-Plane 11, but I recognize that it could just be that this is a fresh install, not weighed down by plugins and aftermarket textures. The default runway textures bothered me, so I added Mr. X6's Airport Environment HD for X-Plane 11. Other add-ons and custom scenery I'm currently running are obviously the TorqueSim SR22s, both turbo-normalized and naturally aspirated versions, V-Flight Air's Piper Aero 3, XP Realistic, Navigraphic FMS, SimHeaven's X-World Buildings, X-Camera, Forkboy, and Orbix orthographic scenery. A reminder that the platform is still in beta, so we're going to have to be good kiddies and wait for developers to make their add-ons fully X-Plane 12 compliant. I was looking forward to the new air traffic control system because it now handles VFR, which is how I perform most of my flying. Taking it one component at a time, some neat things about the new ATIS is that it no longer reports the dew point with negative numbers. It's localized to report the altimeter in QNH for flights in Europe, and when you select it using the ATC window, it auto-tunes onto COM2, which is a nice touch. The runway assignments are reported first, before the weather conditions. I've never come across that, but maybe it's a regional thing. Now, the ATIS reception ranges need a look. While they did away with the 50-mile hard limit, yay! It might reach out too far. I was 100 miles east of Seattle, inbound from Spokane, when I tuned Seattle's ATIS. Both Seattle and Fairchild Air Force Base share the 118 megahertz frequency for their ATIS, but they're 190 miles apart, so it shouldn't be a problem, right? One might think. But while I picked up Seattle at 77 miles out, I also received Fairchild from 150 miles behind me, with 9,000-foot Mount Stewart between us. These weather reports alternated all the way into Seattle. Next up, ground control compels you to use the full length of the runway, no intersection departures. Then, you have to edge right up to the hold short line before the tower acknowledges you. The controlling agency logic is super weird. It follows a rigid linear tree, and stepping off one of its branches can find you trapped in an instruction loop. or locked out of service altogether. I flew IFR from Northeast Philly to Philadelphia International. That's a distance of about 20 nautical miles, and was serviced exclusively by Northeast Philly Tower the whole way there. Sometimes, a tower will bypass its local approach and departure controllers and hand you off to a center. You'll be given a discrete transponder code, but when handed off between agencies, you're instructed to squawk VFR, then to re-enter the previous squawk code you were initially given. One time, they had me contact my destination tower while I was still 41 nautical miles out. Come on. Now, while I wasn't steered into a mountain, I was given convoluted vectors to final that could have depleted any reserve fuel I might have needed. An agency dumped me onto a 2-mile final before releasing me to contact the tower. Had to scramble a little bit to not go missed. Having landed safely, I was explicitly instructed to exit the runway at a specific juncture, which put me prop to prop with departing AI traffic. I mean, the arrows that I was supposed to follow ran right under the planes that were leaving. So there needs to be better coordination. And yet another time, I landed under ATC control, bounced on landing, and had service terminated immediately and punitively. Best I can tell is it counted the bounce as an unauthorized takeoff and was all like, "You have violated ATC's instructions beyond acceptable tolerances. Rah, 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 rah. Get the hell out of here." The ATC needs a good hard look before being declared ready for the release candidate. And yet, with all the annoying things I just mentioned, I'm willing to say that it's still better now, and that ought to let you know how bad it was in X-Plane 11. Like I said earlier, I've linked some of Forkboy's work to the X-Plane 12 beta, and was surprised at how well the sky pairs with photoreal scenery. It's just so easy on the eyes and comparable to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. That's right, I said it. And the SimHeaven buildings really add some texture to the surface. I have to imagine that when Ortho is crafted specifically for X-Plane 12, it'll look even better. On one hand, I think we all wish the default scenery was beautiful right out of the box, or had a way to stream Google Maps as a stopgap measure. We can say that we sim for the physics and not for the scenery all we want, but the visuals are part of the simming experience. And if subpar or outdated graphics take us out of an otherwise accurate experience, then we're getting shortchanged. In my previous logbook entry, I flew the native SR22T G6. Visually, the interior and exterior modeling are quite nice. It's nose wheel casters by default, and it has a functional caps. How hard was that, Asobo? It's mostly well behaved, feels a little overpowered, and it's fast as hell when you can actually maintain full throttle. As a simulation of the SR22, it's acceptable. Compared to the TorqueSim, I gave it a C. Here's why. Any sustained application of power in excess of about 49% will lead to cylinder head temperatures that would be catastrophic in the real world. This will occur with manifold pressure nestled well into the green arc, and a fully rich mixture isn't enough to cool them down. The only thing you can do is maintain power below 40% and go full mixture rich. If Laminar Research fixes this, it can easily go to a middle B. Throw in another feature or two, could maybe get it to an A-. Give me a sec. I want to see what's up at Lancaster.
Lancaster information. India 2220 Zulu special arriving runway 26, departing runway 26. Weather, wind light and variable. Visibility more than 10 miles. Rain, sky conditions scattered at 12,500. Temperature 14, dew point 0, altimeter 29991. Advise on initial contact. You have information. India.
Looking for Lancaster at sunset while coming from the east is the worst, because the airport is right in line with the setting sun and really easy to lose in the haze and the glare. So, the official graphics card for the Flight Sim Logbook has been the venerable Nvidia GeForce GTX 1080. I love it, and think it's performed rather well for 6-year-old technology. So I'm staring down the barrel of upgrading my graphics card. But to what? Do I get a current generation RTX GPU? A new 3000 series card has come down in price, but not as much as I've wanted. Thanks for nothing, crypto miners. And I'm not terribly convinced that they're going to come down much further. Getting a used one is really rolling the dice between getting a gently and lovingly used card against a turned-out unit that was mining 24/7. Then there's the RTX 4000 series, and wow, is there ever a lot to unpack there? First off, Nvidia has lost its goddamn mind. $1,600. Really? I mean, don't get me wrong. I can afford $1,600 to get their new top-of-the-line GPU. I've lived on ramen noodles before, and I ain't afraid to go back, you know. But $1,600 is not worth a 60-something% improvement over the 3080. And that $1,600 may be the minimum. That thing is massive and might not fit into an existing case, so you'll need a bigger case. It might cover needed slots on an existing motherboard, so if you can't reconfigure your slots, you'll need a new motherboard. And very likely you'll need a higher wattage power supply, but wattage requirements are going up across the board, so I can't really hold that against Nvidia. So $1,600 may be the cost just to get in the door. And secondly, Nvidia has been kind of shady lately. So much so that they pissed off EVGA into breaking up with them. That's pretty bad. I don't have anything against AMD. I am, in fact, an old school Radeon man from back when it was ATI. The Sapphire Radeon X1950 Pro with 512 megabytes of bleeding edge graphical badassery, baby. But it's a new day, and their 6000 series is less expensive by almost half of Nvidia's offerings. And AMD's 7000 series launches early next month, so I'm keeping my eyes on all of that. The Intel Arc A770 is $350 and looks positioned to compete with the RTX 3060 and RX 67 XT.
$500.
The Arc A750 is only $20 cheaper. As tempted as I am, I'm just not willing to early adopt here, especially without more information on their performance. So it might be time to come back to AMD, but I need more information and numbers to crunch before I can plot a path forward. Check out the puddles. Kind of gives you something to think about, like, am I going to hydroplane into the grass if I land wrong? Oof! Came in a little flat. Just look at those reflections, man. And I might be buying new brake pads. Yo, for real, check out the orange glow from the low sun. So I ran both X-Planes and Microsoft Flight Simulator back to back to back. And doing so highlighted how I responded to each of them. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 looks simply stunning. Duh. But, and I can't stress this enough, for me, it hasn't been fun to fly. And that's sad, because I'm an old school flight simulator guy who's derived a great deal of satisfaction from FS9. That's the year 2004 for you youngins. I really am trying to make peace with it, but I feel so frustrated by its little quirks, and that after 2 years, multiple world updates, and patches, it still feels doughy. Worse than that, it feels like a heavily coded novelty, only a few breaths more serious than War Thunder. X-Plane 11 allows me to simulate the flying experience in an enjoyable, educational, and pain-free fashion. As configured, it feels smooth and doesn't get in the way of itself. But that wasn't always the case. I didn't warm to X-Plane because the versions before 11 ran like dog water on my box, and I thought the cockpits were too cheap looking to take seriously. But I was intrigued by the version 11 makeover, and once I upgraded my rig, gave it another look. And that's how I got here. Obviously, a great deal of my X-Plane 11 affections apply to the beta of X-Plane 12. I mean, I'm genuinely excited to fly it. There are ways that the beta is only incrementally better than its predecessor, but there are others where it's proven itself the superior version by light years. I hope I've indicated some for the skeptics, because for them, this version is just X-Plane 11 with some choice customizations baked in. While I can't fault that opinion, my counter would be that so much of what makes X-Plane 12 its own unique and better simming platform is under the hood. I believe in X-Plane 12 and have strong hope for the future of this sim and the franchise. Okay, those are the highlights of my time spent with the beta, and I will definitely share my findings with the Laminar Research people because, you know, maybe I see something they don't. And if you don't vote, you can't complain. Anyway, this is your pilot, Quentin J. Parker, and I will catch up with you knuckleheads laters. I'm out! Bye.